It was so bright, and it looked like a window. And it was like I left the hospital room. I remember leaving it, going through the floors. I remember going out into the atmosphere, and it was a blue sky that day. Yet that light was brighter than the blue sky. I remember going through what we call the universe, and even though it was dark, and I remember going by all these planets. But that light before me looked like a window, was brighter, and then I entered into this really dark area. I think that's where most people say they see the light at the end of the tunnel, you know what I mean? But it looked like a window. I always say it wasn't a window. That's the best way I could describe it. And I knew that's where Jesus and the Father is, and I wanted to be with them. And I was headed there. That whole trip was a joyful trip.
No fear.
No fear at all. Even when I'm talking to people now, and I said, yeah, I died, I got a big smile on my face.
Seems like a fun time.
I suffocated, and I'm smiling about it. You understand what I mean? Because I didn't have any fear. All I had was joy, and the closer I got to that window, the greater the joy was. So the journey was really something. One of the things, can I tell you this?
Please.
This was unique. As I was leaving and going to that realm, I remember all of a sudden seeing these other lights pass me by, and they were passing me by like I was standing still. You know what I mean? They were going fast, and I was moving faster than the speed of light, faster than the speed of sound, and yet it looked like these lights were going past me, and all I really saw was the end of the light. The solid part of the light, I really didn't see the end of the light. The tails were, like shooting stars. I found out mine weren't souls. You know what they were? They were prayers.
Really?
Yeah, the actual prayers that people were praying for me and others. It seemed like I was in a stream of prayers that people were praying for me. But on this side of me, there was a bunch of prayers. On that side of me was a bunch of prayers. And they were headed for that window. And they were moving faster than I was. And they were solid and they were substance to them.
Interesting. Okay.
And now I believe when people pray, even though we don't see it, there's a light that leaves our body, literally, and that light is more real than what we see around us. The next thing is I entered in, and when I entered in, everything was right. There was nothing wrong. I always tell people it was past peace. People say, what do you mean by that? There was nothing to be peaceful from. Here on the planet, we got all kinds of things we got to be peaceful from. Me and you here in this area, it's real hot outside. We're inside because it's cooler. You understand what I mean? But we're trying to get peace from the heat. And in that realm, in heaven, where I was at, there was nothing to be peaceful from. And this is what really got me more than anything else. And I fit. It was like I was created for that realm, and I finally came to the realm where I was supposed to be in, and I fit. The closest I can come to describing that actually would be like a fish out of water. I feel like here, and maybe some people don't believe it, I feel like we're a fish out of water. Okay, in this realm. But that realm, everything is right, and I just fit so perfectly. The other thing that got me is everything is alive there. There's nothing dead. You probably heard this before. The grass is alive. The trees are alive. And when I say alive, everything's alive.
You can sense it all.
Not just you sense it, but you're a part of it. You know what
They're
I mean?
all one.
It's not like you're separated from it at all. And so one of the things that really got me was everything there I knew was glad I showed up. I could feel, how you walk in the room, like you have children and you show up and they're glad you showed up.